The curse of the ancient artifact. Some discoveries are meant to stay buried, but some secrets refuse to remain hidden. Tonight, we're diving into a story of obsession, ancient curses, and a mysterious artifact that changed the life of one archaeologist forever. This is the chilling tale of Dr. Alistair Finch and the curse of the ancient artifact. Before we begin, if you love unraveling dark mysteries and uncovering the strange and unexplained, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Tangled Logic, because the truth is often stranger than fiction. Now, let's step into the desert, where history, danger, and the supernatural collide. Now, let's get into the dark and mysterious tale of the archaeologist, Dr. Alistair Finch, and the ancient artifact that would change his life forever. In the fall of 1936, deep in the sands of northern Egypt, a British archaeologist named Dr. Alistair Finch was leading an expedition that promised to make history. Finch was a man obsessed with uncovering the mysteries of the ancient world, often pushing his team past their limits in pursuit of relics that others considered myths. For weeks, the team had been excavating near a ruined temple that locals whispered about with fear. They called it the Temple of the Unseen, a place they claimed was cursed, where those who entered vanished or suffered violent misfortune. Finch dismissed these stories as superstition, but he noticed how the local workers refused to go near the site after sunset. To them, the temple was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred, and the artifact Finch sought was said to be at the heart of its curse. The artifact in question was a golden amulet, rumored to have been created during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king who defied Egypt's priests and nearly tore the kingdom apart. Legends describe the amulet as holding the breath of eternity, granting visions of life beyond death, but at a terrible cost. Finch had read obscure references to it in fragmented papyri stored in the British Museum. Unlike many scholars, he believed the amulet truly existed. To him, this wasn't about greed, though fame and fortune surely beckoned, but about cementing his name in history alongside Carter and Schliemann. He wanted to be remembered as the man who found what others dared not even search for. As Finch pressed his team further into the crumbling temple, he ignored the growing sense of dread that weighed on the site, a silence so thick it seemed to choke the very air around them. After weeks of grueling excavation, Finch's team uncovered a sealed chamber beneath the temple. The entrance was blocked by massive limestone slabs, etched with hieroglyphs that none of the workers would touch. Finch translated enough to understand the warning. Here lies the keeper of shadows. Disturb not the vessel, lest eternity claim you. The inscription only fueled his determination. He had read enough ancient warnings to know they were usually deterrents meant to frighten grave robbers. Using ropes and chisels, the team hauled the slabs aside, releasing a stale gust of air that smelled faintly metallic, like rust and blood. The torchlight revealed a narrow staircase spiraling downward into total darkness. Finch felt a thrill run through him. This was the kind of discovery archaeologists dreamed of, the untouched inner sanctum of a temple that had lain silent for millennia. Against the protests of his guides, Finch descended first, determined to face whatever awaited below. At the bottom of the staircase lay a chamber unlike anything Finch had seen before. The walls were painted in deep shades of black and crimson, decorated with symbols that didn't match traditional Egyptian iconography. Instead of familiar gods like Ra or Osiris, strange elongated figures with hollow eyes and distorted limbs covered the walls. They seemed to writhe and twist in the flickering torchlight, almost alive. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a small box made of ebony and bound with gold clasps. Finch felt his heart hammering. This had to be it, the container for the amulet. His colleagues hesitated, whispering about the danger of breaking seals placed thousands of years ago. But Finch, with shaking hands, pried open the clasps and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in velvet that had long since rotted, gleamed the golden amulet, its surface etched with spiraling patterns that seemed to move when he stared too long. The moment Finch touched the amulet, a chill shot through his body. He staggered back, clutching the object as the chamber seemed to groan around him. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the torches sputtered as if a wind had rushed through the sealed room. Finch swore he heard a whisper knot in his ears, but in his mind, a low, drawn-out voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have awoken me." His companions shouted, begging him to drop the amulet, but Finch couldn't let go. His fingers were locked around it, as though fused to the metal. Then, as suddenly as it began, the moment passed. The room fell silent again. The amulet was cool in his hand, almost ordinary, though Finch knew in his bones that something had changed. He told himself it was exhaustion, nerves, imagination. But deep down, he sensed he had crossed a line that should never have been touched. That night, Finch dreamed. He was standing in the desert, the stars blazing above him, when the sand beneath his feet began to writhe like water. Out of it rose shadowy figures with hollow eyes, reaching for him with elongated arms. They whispered in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. Promises of knowledge, power, and eternity. He awoke drenched in sweat, the amulet still clutched in his hand. No matter where he placed it, the artifact always seemed to end up back in his grasp by morning. His health began to decline rapidly. He developed a persistent cough, his skin grew pale, and dark circles formed beneath his eyes. Yet he refused to leave the site, convinced the amulet was only the beginning. He wanted to understand its power. But the workers began deserting the camp, claiming they heard screams at night and saw shadowy figures circling the tents. By the third week after discovering the amulet, Finch's team had dwindled to only 2 assistants, both British students who idolized him. The local guides had all fled, leaving behind their wages too terrified to remain. Finch's obsession deepened. He spent hours staring at the amulet, convinced that its shifting patterns contained a message meant only for him. His assistants grew alarmed when he began muttering to himself in a language they didn't recognize. Worse, strange accidents plagued the camp. One morning, they found their food stores spoiled overnight, reeking of rot. Another evening, one assistant woke screaming, claiming he had seen a figure standing at the edge of his tenta. Tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes and no mouth. Finch dismissed these incidents as stress-induced hallucinations, but his assistants weren't convinced. They wanted to leave, but Finch insisted the amulet had chosen him, and abandoning it would doom them all. The breaking point came when one of the assistants, Thomas, vanished. He had gone to fetch water from a nearby well and never returned. His footprints led halfway to the well before disappearing abruptly in the sand, as though he had been lifted into the air. The remaining assistant, Edward, panicked. He demanded they leave at once, but Finch refused. He insisted Thomas was still alive, that he could hear his voice whispering from the amulet. Edward accused Finch of losing his mind. Their shouting match ended with Edward packing his belongings and storming off into the desert alone. Finch never saw him again. Alone in the camp, Finch finally admitted what he already knew. The amulet was cursed, but instead of discarding it, he clung to it more tightly. He believed that if he could unravel its secrets, he could control the curse, perhaps even harness the eternal life it promised. Finch began recording his experiences in a leather-bound journal, detailing the strange occurrences surrounding the amulet. His notes grew increasingly erratic. One page described how he awoke to find ancient hieroglyphs scrawled across the walls of his tent, though when he blinked, they vanished. Another entry claimed that the stars above the desert shifted each night into unfamiliar constellations, as though he were no longer under the same sky. Most disturbingly, Finch wrote that he had begun hearing voices not just at night, but in broad daylight, whispering from the amulet itself. They urged him deeper into the ruins, promising him the final revelation. Though his body weakened by the day, his obsession only strengthened. He convinced himself that his assistants hadn't abandoned him at all, that they had been taken into another realm, and that if he persevered, he could follow them and return with the knowledge of eternity. Weeks later, a supply caravan from Cairo arrived at the site to deliver rations. What they found chilled them to the bone. The camp was abandoned, tents torn, supplies scattered, and sand covering what looked like deep furrows, as though something had been dragged across the ground. The only sign of life was Finch's journal, lying open on the central table. The final entry read, "Tonight, I followed the keeper into eternity. The doorway will open. I must step through." Beyond that, the pages were blank. There was no sign of Finch, his assistants, or the amulet. The caravan leader ordered the site sealed immediately, fearing that lingering might draw the same fate upon them. Rumors spread quickly through Cairo of an Englishman who had vanished into the desert after uncovering a cursed relic. Archaeologists who had once admired Finch's work whispered about his obsession, labeling him a cautionary tale in academic circles. For decades, Finch's disappearance remained unsolved. His journal was archived at the British Museum. Dismissed as the ramblings of a man driven mad by heat, isolation, and ambition, the amulet itself was never recovered, and most scholars assumed it had been lost with Finch's body somewhere in the shifting sands. But whispers persisted among collectors and black market dealers. Some claimed the amulet resurfaced briefly in the 1950s, sold in secret to a European aristocrat who later died under bizarre circumstances, found lifeless in his library, with every mirror in his mansion shattered. Others swore it had been seen in the hands of an American oil tycoon, whose family line mysteriously ended in tragedy within a single generation. The stories were impossible to verify, but one theme was consistent. Wherever the amulet appeared, misfortune and unexplained deaths followed like a shadow that could not be outrun. In 1972, a young Egyptian archaeologist named Layla Hassan stumbled upon Finch's journal while conducting research for her doctoral thesis. Unlike others, she wasn't convinced it was madness. She noticed patterns in the symbols Finch described: spirals, distorted figures, and repeated references to the Keeper of Shadows. These matched carvings recently uncovered in a separate dig near Amarna, the city of Akhenaten. Intrigued, Layla retraced Finch's expedition, locating the abandoned site in the northern desert. To her surprise, the temple still stood, partially collapsed but unmistakable. Local villagers warned her to leave, telling her of strange lights seen at night and travelers who vanished in the area. But Layla was determined. She pressed forward, believing she could succeed where Finch had failed. In her field notes, she mentioned feeling watched, as if someone or something was waiting for her return. Still, she pressed deeper into the ruins, driven by the lure of discovery. Layla's team uncovered the same sealed chamber Finch had described, though much of it had collapsed. Inside, they found evidence that someone had been there long after the temple was abandoned. Charred torch remains, fragments of canvas, and a broken fountain pen matching Finch's era. Most chilling of all, they discovered scratch marks along the walls, carved deep into the stone. They weren't hieroglyphs, but crude, desperate words written in English. "It's opening. I can't stop it." Layla recorded everything meticulously, but admitted in her notes that she felt uneasy, as though the air itself pressed against her chest. That night, her team heard sounds echoing through the ruins, low groans, like stone grinding against stone, though the desert was still. Several workers refused to stay another day, abandoning the expedition. Layla, however, remained, her resolve now teetering between academic curiosity and a gnawing sense of dread. On the fourth night, Layla dreamed of a man standing at the foot of her cot. He was tall, gaunt, and his hollow eyes seemed endless, drawing her in like a void. In his hand gleamed the golden amulet. "You have come to finish his work," the figure whispered. She awoke with a start, her tent empty, the desert silent. But when she checked her belongings, she found a single strand of gold thread lying on her journal thread that looked impossibly new, untouched by centuries. She pocketed it, shaken, but did not tell her team. The next morning, one of her assistants vanished without a trace, just as Finch's had decades earlier. The team searched desperately, but the footprints ended abruptly in the sand. Terrified, the remaining workers mutinied and left, dragging supplies with them. Layla stayed behind, her resolve now teetering between academic curiosity and a gnawing sense of dread. Layla's final notes were scribbled hastily, the handwriting uneven. She wrote of hearing whispers from beneath the ground, of seeing figures standing among the dunes at dusk, watching her with unblinking eyes. Her last entry read, "The keeper demands passage. Finch was only the beginning. I feel the doorway opening again. After that, nothing." Weeks later, another caravan stumbled upon the ruins and found her camp abandoned, her journal lying open beside the same ebony box Finch had described. The amulet itself was gone. No body was ever found. Once again, the site was abandoned, this time sealed by the Egyptian government. The journals of Finch and Layla were quietly archived, locked away from public view. But among scholars, whispers grew louder. Perhaps the amulet was no myth. Perhaps it had survived, moving from hand to hand, leaving only ruin in its wake. In the decades that followed, sightings of the amulet were rare but always linked to tragedy. In 1989, a wealthy German collector was found dead in his vault, his body emaciated as though drained of life. Among his possessions was a sketch of a golden amulet, identical to Finch's description. In 2003, a private excavation in Sudan reportedly uncovered a similar object. Though the team vanished before their discovery could be confirmed, the locals claimed a sandstorm swallowed them whole, their camp erased overnight. The stories piled up, each stranger than the last, until the amulet took on a reputation among underground collectors, an object of immense value that no one dared actually own. It was said to choose its bearer, and once it did, escape was impossible. The curse of the Keeper of Shadows was not bound by time or distance. It followed like a hunter stalking prey. Today, Finch's story has become a legend in archaeological circles, a whispered warning about the dangers of obsession and the thin line between discovery and damnation. But there are those who believe the amulet is still out there, waiting to resurface. Unverified reports suggest it was last seen in 2015, when a shipment of antiquities bound for London was mysteriously lost at sea. The freighter carrying it never issued a distress call, but when investigators found the wreck, the crew's bodies were strangely absent. Not a single soul was recovered, as though the ocean had claimed them without a trace. Among the recovered cargo manifest was a vague description: golden pendant, spiral etchings, origin unknown. Whether this was Finch's amulet remains unproven, but those who know the story suspect the truth. The keeper had merely claimed more lives, biding its time until it would surface again. The tale of Dr. Alistair Finch isn't simply a story about an archaeologist who disappeared into the desert. It's a story about the danger of seeking knowledge beyond human limits, of ignoring warnings etched in stone by civilizations who understood far more about death than we give them credit for. The amulet may have been designed not as a gift, but as a prisoner object meant to contain something that should never walk freely in our world. Finch, Layla, and countless others after them may have simply been victims of curiosity, opening a door that was never meant to be opened. And if the amulet truly does still exist, it means the prison remains unsealed. The Keeper of Shadows still walks, whispering promises to those desperate enough to listen. And so, the question lingers. What truly happened to Dr. Alistair Finch on that fateful night in 1936? Did he step through a doorway into another realm, as his final journal entry suggests? Or did the desert simply swallow him whole, leaving behind nothing but a cursed story that grows darker with every telling? The unsettling part is that both explanations feel equally possible. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between, that Finch found what he was looking for, but the cost was far greater than he ever imagined. The sands of Egypt have a way of keeping their secrets. burying them deep beneath time until another curious soul digs them up again. And when they do, the keeper will be waiting. That is the chilling story of the curse of the ancient artifact, a tale of ambition, obsession, and a curse that may still linger today. Was Dr. Alistair Finch a brilliant archaeologist who went too far, or a man who stumbled onto something humanity was never meant to touch? You decide. What's certain is that the amulet story isn't over, and one day it might resurface again. If it does, let's just hope the next person who finds it remembers the warnings. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. Even though you're a world away, your support means the world to me. Please like and subscribe to Tangled Logic for more mysteries like this one. And remember, some discoveries are better left buried.